Here we go again, folks. Don't be like that. You know what's really interesting? Right now, whenever Bitcoin moves even a little, everyone starts shouting 40K. Nobody talks about anything in between, like bear market, but we're going straight to 40,000. Sure, maybe we are, but I think it's way too early to call that after just a small move because we still have about 6 trillion in support on the way up. So for now, just chill. I think the laugh like that run up on Bitcoin. That run up on Bitcoin itself, we traded it really well, both on Bitcoin and on alt. Made some money, super cool. Of course, for me, the leaders of that move were Hyperliquid and Per. Then there were a few long positions. We had, I think, 6 open at the same time at one point. We took profits, then let the rest hit break even, so everything was fine. Yesterday, I, tried to open that Bitcoin XPL and Zeke XP. Made money on XLP, lost money on Zeke, so it kind of balanced out. And in the end, I jumped out of that Bitcoin long at a point where I'd say we went long here and exited here, which was just a 1.2R loss. Not really, in my opinion, any kind of major disaster. So I think we traded it relatively well. Of course, if we'd been short from $126,000, that would have been better. Yeah, it would have. But given the current circumstances, I really think we traded it very sensibly. The real question is what exactly happens now? And that's precisely what we'll talk about today. So, my friends, let's get right into Bitcoin. Bitcoin, well, we covered everything yesterday on the evening stream. So, friends, yesterday we talked all about this specific setup. About this setup with the mantles, which are probably the most important thing for us to consider right now. This mantle right here, which is approaching. Of course, it's coming up in about 4 days, but CME Futures only has 2 days left. We'll take a look at the CME Futures chart, which we didn't do yesterday. So here, the gap needs to be filled. There's a rejection. It's exactly the same story as with Bitcoin itself, with Bitcoin and the Bybit chart. I'll remove this and put this here. You'll like it. So this is the mandatory zone for us of reclaim. So we stay back in that range. For this zone right now, we have just a little over 1.5 days of price action, nothing much. So, in the absolute worst case scenario that we might face, we have this failure here. And if we really wanted to be totally kosher, we'd mark this specific level right over here. Yeah. So this is definitely the high for us under which we don't really want to see it break back down toward those previous lows. I might put it this way. As long as we're at least above this low, above this line, it's still just a rejection that could still end up like this. If we close down here below, then that's really bad news. But I really don't think we'll close below that by the end of the month. So right now, this is kind of a dead zone that we don't want to be in. Ideally, we want to reclaim that red area and keep moving up. A break below this means very likely. Look, if we actually close the month below the red area, then I really think we could go all the way down here, down to 44. But I don't really think that's going to happen. Back to the regular chart. So the regular chart shows us the monthly high and the weekly support, which we front ran, worked well, and is now being retested. That means this is a line I didn't have on the chart last night, but so far it's been reacting in a really interesting way. And it makes sense, relatively speaking, in the context of the trade itself, or rather the setup of the chart as a whole. We have a liquidity grab below this daily low. We have this big impulsive candle, so that's also good, meaning a reaction here at this red line makes sense. Very interesting. It makes sense. It's all good. On the other hand, it still stands that this makes sense to go long on a reclaim. Or perhaps after a liquidity grab below that low. This setup with a super tight invalidation obviously also makes a lot of sense because it's still a weekly support turned resistance flip that we're now retesting. It really makes sense. This definitely makes sense. Some kind of reaction is expected. Will it be the final reaction or will it be enough? We'll just have to see. What is definitely a solid spot to go long is this one right here. So that's what we're looking at right now. Nothing's changed there. This is pretty much the only thing we liked or that I find interesting. But what I personally like, friends, is this. For me, at this moment, it makes sense to start entering gold, and I'm going to start entering it now with the expectation of this move here. But overall, this already seems like a very interesting spot to start DCAing into this long position. That means this is something I'm going to open right now. As for silver, I also see it at an important support, but I don't like this part here. Both of these charts are telling me that there could still be a spike down. So I'd like to see at least a liquidity grab in this context below $70, then a reclaim and a full send upward. Gold, on the other hand, is already at a point where it could actually start performing quite well, which means I'm going to start DCAing into it now. But with silver, I'm still a bit nervous. I'm just not really feeling that confident about it yet. So, this is one very interesting thing I'll be watching closely in the coming days. The tensions between Iran and America have started exchanging rockets again. There was another attack during the night, and coincidentally, it's happening right at the support zone. So, today, it'll be very interesting to watch the opening of the New York session. This chart isn't really moving, but otherwise, this position is still valid, still interesting. My expectation was that this would be the crash pivot, that we'd pump from here, do this, and then start crashing because the war would end. The big question is, and we'll only be able to evaluate this in a few weeks or months, whether this date wasn't actually the pivot. Because the pivots it throws out, those are real pivots. It's not about being long or short. But when we take a closer look at this, and this line has been here for weeks. If this is just pure consolidation and we were to go for another leg up now, technically that would be a perfectly logical outcome to me. It's important to point out that technically we've been consolidating for quite a while. The underlying issue is starting to escalate. And if this current market setup continues to develop, then that means as long as we don't start losing this range, I don't think it's a bad spot to consider the upside. But it's true that given the recent news, I would have expected oil to spike up by now, which hasn't happened yet. So maybe it's just over and we're heading down. But I can't imagine we'll just leave it like this for the long term. So this is another setup I'm definitely watching right now. So, I'm going to take a much more thorough moment right now to provide a very detailed look at exactly what is unfolding in the current market landscape right here. If we look closely at the charts, we can clearly see that BMNR Circle is very actively working to fill that specific price gap we have been monitoring so closely. And meanwhile, MicroStrategy is also continuing to follow a very similar technical pattern as it steadily works on filling its own respective gap as well. Keep a close eye on the markets as GAA is being mentioned right now. The pool is currently in a consolidation phase while SPE is actively grabbing liquidity from below. STRC is showing no movement, Tron is showing nothing, and these others are showing nothing as well. Bitcoin dominance just got slightly rejected at these levels, and the total market cap was rejected too, just like Bitcoin was. Additionally, the total 2 index was also rejected by the resistance. Partially rejected, Bitcoin's USDT dominance is trying to reclaim. Well, Bitcoin really needs to step up, otherwise, we're in for a dry summer ahead. And XRP tapped that level. For me, this is an extremely important level for XRP. It barely tapped it though. I have to admit, I'd like to see another spike. I'd like to see something like this. This is just a minor tap, but otherwise, it's an extremely important level for continuation, in my opinion. Zeke, Zek. It's worth noting that we exited at a good moment, that we didn't hold on to this trade any longer, because right now, this would really be a big headache. Ideally, something like this, and like this will end up being a very good entry opportunity. Let's take a look at NAR as well. NAR also got rejected, also heading toward the key June. And Hyperliquid is the only one. It's definitely got a bit of momentum right now and a bit of strength too. It's currently reclaiming the daily open and really trying to hold it. Yeah, but otherwise, the explanation from yesterday's stream remains exactly the same. This is the specific level that makes the most sense to potentially buy. So, to sum it all up for you, my friends, this is precisely the kind of level where I can imagine we'll find some solid support. That's the key weekly support resistance flip retest we've been watching. The last level that makes sense for grabbing liquidity and then moving higher is this one. Otherwise, it's basically done. Alternatively, a reclaim of either the previous week's low or that red zone on the higher time frame, that's what we probably want to see. Until then, everything here is shaky. If anyone was bidding at this level, I'd be very careful with a stop loss, very aggressive, because this is the kind of area that really makes a whole lot of sense for us to go for. So that's that. So, friends, in addition to all of that, there's really no major news from yesterday that you should care about. Everything's the same, everything's landing, and not much else really happened, except for a few rockets, which is terrible, right? Other than those few rockets, nothing really terrible happened. So, that is pretty much all for now.